Welcome to Ember Igniters Podcast, the podcast that sets your soul ablaze. I'm Jenna Wilmers here with Fran Malfer, and we are your Ember Igniters. I've got that song stuck in my head, Tell Me Something Good. You may have heard
it.
it. Love that song. Yeah. Today is such a good day here at Sparklight Ministry. We really enjoy being Ember Igniters of people's lives, helping them to discover that they have the power.
That's right.
That they can unlock their potential and relaunch their stories.
Absolutely. Since we started this podcast, life has been really incredible.
Yes.
It's been great. We've seen great abundance. And there have been some changes in our lives. Both Jenna and I are no longer in the jobs that we held. And we're excited, really, to be your Ember Igniters.
But isn't it sad because some people feel stuck in their jobs?
Isn't that the truth?
Well, that's what today's episode's about, is being stuck in your job and not having joy.
That's right. We're not in our jobs because, honestly, God gave us the ability to find our joy spot. Mm-hmm. So one of the things we know that today, people are always looking for what's good. That's why you probably have that song going on in your head.
Yeah.
So culture and society really have created this need for instant joy, satisfaction and fulfillment right now.
Yeah.
When you think about it.
We become like an instantaneous society with everything.
Yeah. I mean, when you think about, you can order your groceries online.
Yeah.
You can
Google if you need to know something.
Well, and now if you're a part of Amazon Prime, you can have it the next day.
Yeah.
I mean...
Well, speaking of Google, I remember my husband saying, Google has ruined a good argument, because it used to be that, you could have a good argument with somebody. And
right.
And then now it's like, well, no, I'm just going to Google it. And then,
this is so true. This is so true. So we're not using our brains. We're just using our cell phones. Well, it's a thing that we really do have to think about. All these things, they don't really help us to have what I would say is a long-standing fulfillment. They're just, we're clicking them off,
We are.
And so we're not really always finding that fulfillment in life.
It's almost like we're always looking for the next high or excitement, or that dose of the dopamine that we get.
Yeah, I think
minds,
that's really true. And I think it's really true more today than ever before.
I agree. Yeah.
I think in my day it might have been a little different, but we had the same issues. We still struggled sometimes, but
time was slower back then, though.
It was.
Everything, it seems like, to me anyways, that everything is kind of just sped up.
Yeah.
Like exponentially.
I kind of love that Jenna and I can have these generational kinds of conversations, because truthfully, you might hear us as older people say those things and just, pass it off on us and say, well, you just don't understand. Well, we do honestly understand. We see the advantages, but we also see the disadvantages. So sometimes it's that thing where you just can't expect great things if you're not willing to do the hard work.
Yeah.
And we really want to kind of make sure that people understand that there is a way to have fulfillment in our lives and in our jobs. So that begs the question, what is fulfillment? For a person, typically, I think it refers to something like having a really deep, deep sense of satisfaction and basically contentment. That happiness that you can have when you're really living out your meaningful and purposeful life. Society's obsession with instant gratification truly masks deeper fulfillment. I mean, think about it. Our society masks the deeper fulfillment because all we're doing is constantly looking for that instant gratification.
This reminds me of a story of someone I know. So, this guy, when I met him, he was very much into, I am going to go to school and I'm going to become a vocational teacher and teach kids how to weld. And vocational meaning like a career center. Mm-hmm. He didn't want to be like a teacher per se. And so when he got his associates and he was almost to his bachelor's, and in there, they were like, well, by the way, you need 1,000 hours of work experience. And so he had to go get an actual job for on-the-job experience.
Yeah, that
Well,
makes sense.
so he goes to get this job, and as he gets this job, I remember his dad telling him, like, hey, I know you're getting this job, but don't get used to the money.
Oh, good point.
And so he goes down the road, gets his 1,000 hours, and as he gets there, he's then told by the school, well, in order to get your degree, you need to quit your job and then come and do your student teaching, and then we'll give you your bachelor's degree.
Wow.
So nothing was anything that he planned or expected, and almost got his path just kind of got thwarted at that point because he now had to make a really hard decision at the crossroads of, do I quit my job just to go back to school to possibly get a job that's making a lot less money?
Yeah.
Or do I go back and follow what I wanted to do in the beginning? Well, I think some of us, we get into a job and we realize, oh, this is not fulfilling. So then you almost have, at that point, you've settled for where you are.
It happens all the time.
And then it creates feeling stuck.
Yeah.
I mean, some people even, go after what they think they wanted to do in life, and then they get there and they're like, whoa, this is not what I thought it was going to be, or anything like that, and doesn't go as they expected, and it's unfulfilling. Well, when you're unfulfilled, your behavior starts to exemplify it.
It sure does. It sure does.
You become, depressed or downcast or angry, short-tempered. Man, I've experienced those in a couple of jobs that,
And maybe some of you are experiencing it even now.
Yeah, absolutely. But the one thing I want you to remember is that settling for a job that doesn't align with your dreams will lead to unfulfillment.
That's right.
If you settle for a job that doesn't align with your dreams, it will lead to unfulfillment.
So I kind of think in this direction. If you flip that coin around and said, what if this person had decided to take that other choice, that other option?
Yeah, I wonder.
What would their life look like today? I'm sorry, I'm getting a little frog in my throat. I wonder if he had quit that job and gone back to the school and taken the time to do what wasn't his favorite thing, which was to put in those hours and stuff. What would he have learned in life differently than what he was learning in a place where he was feeling unfulfilled?
I know it would be different because I know that in his current job that he has, which is not the story I'm talking about, but I know in his current job, he doesn't feel totally fulfilled, but he does it to provide for his family. Sure. And if you were to ask him, he would probably say, well, it's not that bad that I need to go find a new job, sort of thing.
Sure.
So to me, it reminds me of like the settler. He just kind of settled. But I know that the Lord wants more for him. And so I think that because of the settlement, I think that he doesn't see a way out or a picture to the fulfillment. Well, does that make sense?
Yeah, it really, really does. The way out. It's like I think about things like soundtracks.
Yes.
They're a groove in this vinyl. I know some of you may not remember records, but back in the day, the needle would go through a groove, and this is where it recorded. So you do get kind of in a rut, and you think that this is where you have to go, and you just keep doing it. So I kind of wonder if had that changed and skipped a track.
Yes.
Because, sometimes records, the needle would skip a track. What could happen? Well, we're learning that as individual people, there really are different types of people. And some people are those who, they just don't know what they want to do.
Right.
I remember being in school and people would say, so when you graduate high school, what you going to do? What do you want? What are you going for? And there were people who they knew.
There was always that pressure too, to know.
Yeah.
And, and I see a lot today of a lot of kids, even in high school, where you ask them like, well, what are they going to do? And they can't tell you.
No.
And
Right.
it's like, and I think that's part of the push of why more kids are going to community college because they don't know what they want to do. And I think that just comes from years of not using your imagination to picture it or look it up. I mean, that reminds me of this little thing that I want to do with Landon. So I saw one day on social media where on their 16th birthday, this parent arranged for their child to go and do jobs, like go to jobs
Oh.
with other people.
Uh-huh.
And so the parent had asked the child, like, well, what do you want to be? And, they're like, well, I would want to maybe be this or be that. And so the parent arranged for them to go experience the job.
That's kind of cool.
Yeah. And I was
It's
like,
really
well, that's
cool.
really cool.
Yeah.
And so then after that, the child has to invite them all over to dinner and then tell them the one takeaway. And, the parent would talk to the other parent,
Sure.
the other people and say, this is a career choice they're considering. Please pour into them, that sort of thing. So it really became like a huge little
Life lesson there, right?
And it's just a really cool thing because there are so many people who also know what they want to do, but then they don't do it.
Well, and that's a really good thing. I mean, I've told you some of my stories, things that I imagined to do, and it didn't happen. And I don't know why it didn't happen. It just sort of like it felt like my life didn't allow for it to happen. I knew what I wanted to be.
Do you think though that maybe it was a lot to sacrifice and change though?
I believe that's part of the issue for a lot of us is that you have to, as we would always say, make a list, pros and cons.
Yes.
And so when you started doing the pros and the cons, sometimes that's what you went towards, whether it was really your heart's desire or not. You just knew that you had to follow that path because it would get you somewhere, but not really where you wanted to be. Well, in the long run, what's going to happen is you're going to become unfulfilled. You're not going to feel satisfaction. And so you just have to be kind of willing, right, to pay the price, to do whatever is necessary, and to maybe make the sacrifice and do the hard work,
Yeah.
So
Sometimes that's the hardest part.
it is the hardest part. Maybe you're sitting there listening to us and saying, but you just don't understand my situation. Well, we do.
We do.
We've really been through that, kind of place in our life where we've had to make some tough decisions about the choices of where did we want to place our, I don't know if you call it work or career or
Well, I would say
call.
our attention.
Yeah, that's good.
Because I mean, we both had to make decisions.
We did.
To leave our jobs.
Yes.
We had good jobs, and we're forever grateful to those jobs because
We
of
are.
the people that were there that poured into us over the years.
That's why we said at the beginning of this podcast, things are going good for us.
Yes.
We're really experiencing things we never experienced before that are joyful and they give us satisfaction.
That reminds me of a quote, and I don't remember who said it, but sometimes you have to leave great things for greater things.
Oh, that is good.
Sometimes you have to leave great things for greater things.
Yeah, and then then there are those people who they actually know what they want to do and they do it. Wow. That's because I think those people, they know themselves. They understand what
Yes.
their focus and their passion is, and they understand that there's a purpose to it, and they're basically created to be that person. And so they are actually the most fulfilled people, the ones who follow the path that they know, and then they do it. And so we've had the wonderful place of being able to understand that through some of our mentors. So it reminds us that we and you can have fulfillment by pursuing your passion. That's what we're doing.
Yes.
So when you do ignite that in yourself, when you say, okay, this is the line I'm drawing in the sand. So I'm igniting my fulfillment because I'm going to go and I'm going to pursue that one thing I know I'm really good at. So it's really never too late, isn't it?
It's really not. I mean, and if you're ready, it's not too late for you.
That's right.
So I found this really cool Harvard Business Review conducted a study,
Oh,
and they found that 95% of people, I mean, that's a big number, okay, think that they are self-aware, but only 10 to 15 actually are.
what?
Can you believe that? Only 10 to 15% of us are actually self-aware.
That is incredible because I think I know myself.
I think a lot of us all do. But I'm sure we've all worked with somebody who you can totally tell that they are totally unaware of themselves, right? I mean, we've all experienced it.
Yeah, yeah. Did they actually at all say why it was that people didn't know that they were aware or not aware?
Well, one thing that I did find interesting is that the article talked about how there were actually two reasons why people who are self aware didn't tell the people who were
Oh,
unaware that, like, hey, you got to understand this, right?
yeah.
And that kind of also surprised me too. But after reading it, I was like, oh, yeah, I felt that same way. So one reason is that they don't feel like they're the right person to go and tell that person,
Oh, yeah.
the advice or whatnot, which I've been there. So I get
Yeah.
it. You too?
Well, yeah, I've lived a pretty long life, so I have to say that that's really true. You want to be that person, but you just know that it's not going to be received well, and so you
Yes.
just don't feel like you can go there.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and then the second reason that some people didn't say anything either was that the risk was too high. And again, I think it goes back to that receiving well, where you might have the confidence and you might feel like you're the right person to say it. But if you're saying it to your friend and you don't think they're going to listen to you, it could ruin a friendship or a relationship or something like that. And then what? You're kind of lost out
You
there.
know, you're saying that, and it just kind of reminds me of things in my own life where I'm pretty sure that people were trying to help me understand things about myself that I could not see. You know, I had a very long career in a wonderful position, and over the course of those times, I found myself having people say things to me, and I would be, really? That's how you see me? So talk about unawareness. You know, I didn't see myself that way. And so there's a catch in that I kind of lost myself. You know, I went, okay, well, who am I? And so what I started to do was, well, I'll just do whatever anyone tells me to do.
Oh, yeah.
And I wonder if some of you out there may not feel the same way because it took a long time for me to learn that until I could understand some of the things that were coming at me or to literally, and I mean this in the best possible way, to step back from myself.
Yeah, I hear you.
You know, just we don't have, like we talked about how fast our world is, and I understand we don't always feel like we have the time to even step back and reevaluate what happened in a day or in that last meeting that you were in or whatever. You know, it takes, even for us as individuals, it takes the risk to say, I want to look deeper into the whys.
I also think it comes from good questions. I think a lot of us, we speak to respond instead of really asking questions to understand
That's a
things
good point.
from. And so you have to ask good questions, but also build that level of trust to be able to talk to that person.
Right.
Because, I mean, I know I've asked you a lot of hard questions,
Yes.
and you have asked me some hard questions that have made me go, oh, and sometimes they don't feel good. I'll just put that out there. They don't feel good when they come to you and they
Yep.
kind of smack you a little bit where you're just kind of like, okay, but because the trust is there
Exactly.
between us,
It's huge.
it makes it so much different. So I think that's why it plays such a big role, especially in the workplace, where
It does.
they're
And
not going to blurt it out.
when Jenna said that, we've kind of had those moments. I mean, she has asked me questions that have triggered things in me. And I can't blame her, for what it did in myself. So I had to really kind of go, why did I respond in that certain way? What has that got to do with anything? What's the process I'm going through? This is one of the things that we believe is really important in process of where you're trying to find fulfillment is you have to know yourself.
You do.
Because if you don't, then you are going to be kind of like the waves of the sea. Sometimes you're a big wave, sometimes you're a not so big wave, and you get lost into what that is. And I know that happened to me. And so, yes, there was trust that we built, but in the beginning it was hard.
Well, and also I would point out, be willing to have the hard conversations.
Yeah.
We kind of have a rule, which at first sucked for both of us. That,
to say the least.
Yeah. That, when you're upset about something, or, well, as we say, we're going to die on the hill for something, right?
Yeah.
Or if we get triggered, take a break. And then when you come back, you have to keep trying to talk about it. And if you have to take a break, you take another break. But I can tell you that's been the one biggest breakthrough that we've had and really it makes it so that like we actually don't argue much, which is great too.
No, and I think when she says take a break, it wasn't just that we walked out of each other's sight. We did leave each other, move into a different environment, but while we were there, we were doing that self-reflection. It's kind of important to find time. So if you're thinking, wow, that meeting went bad and someone just came at me and they were attacking me, it begs you to take a minute and say, well, why did I feel that way?
I would also say as well, the taking a break wasn't like, I'm not talking to you, I need a break.
No.
It was not like that at all.
No.
It's always been, hey, this isn't quite working right this moment. Let's take 5 minutes and come back.
And we learned each other's facial expressions. And we learned things like, she's not tracking with me.
Yes.
Or she'll say to me, I'm kind of lost in where you are. And then I think, okay, that's fair. That's not a criticism to me. But I've had triggers where if someone had said that to me years ago, I would be going, I don't understand you. What do you mean you don't understand me? I'm speaking clearly right now. What's not to know? But
Well, and the other thing that we've also learned is to say it differently. Because I think a lot of the time people, when they explain something, they re-explain it again the same way. And it's like, well, that's like the definition of insanity, right? Saying the same thing over and again, trying to make different results or whatever.
Yeah.
And so really learning how to say it differently or help draw a different path to make the connection.
Yeah.
That's really helped me a few times because I love to hear where she's thinking, something should go. And you brought a lot of great ideas to the table. And so I just love hearing.
But to back off on that, when she asks me those questions, it actually gives me a pause in my brain. And I have to think, why did I just say that? I'm a talker. And I actually verbally process. Now, not everyone gets that. So then when I'm out there blabbering away, they think it's all settled in my mind. Not always. So I'm learning that by her really good questions to me, and I think this is what you also have to think, is that person actually doing this for my good? Instead of, are they just trying to be critical of me? So self-awareness becomes a really important part of how do we find success and fulfillment in our life, because when we know who we are, it changes things for us, don't you think?
It does. I want to touch on the babbler people that you were kind of talking about, because I think we've all experienced somebody like that in our workplace, who constantly just talks and talks and talks. And to be honest, I bet you if you were to ask them, they don't know they do it.
It's true.
And I also want you to think about the fact that if they do know they do it, it's their way of processing. You might be able to do that internally. You might be able, I mean, which I can. I can process internally and then come out with just my main point. Fran needs to say a few words and kind of go through it, which is okay too, because that's the way she processes. But I'm able to listen to what she says and pull out those points and one-liners that she's trying to get to. And then I'm able to repeat it back to her. She's like, yes, that's exactly what I'm saying. But she used way more words than that. And so I think we need to have grace for those people as well, because it puts friction in our work environments that don't need to be there.
I mean, I've experienced that way too much in my life, where my ability to just keep talking has caused a lot of, discord is what I would say. And then people get lost in my thinking. They're not tracking,
Well, they try to follow, but if you're processing, your way of processing is different.
It's different.
They're not going to track.
That's exactly right.
However hard they try.
So one of the things that happened to me, which was a really good thing, aside from Jenna, I did have another individual in my life who sometimes just said things to me that made me go, whoa, really? And so what happened then is I would really have to stop and reflect on what they had said to me instead of disregarding it. And, one of the things that our society doesn't really allow us to have is what I would call quiet time, a place just to sit
That's so
quietly and just to think. It's we got to get this done. We have to get production out. It's this constant movement, and there's no way to stop and pause in your day. Sometimes you may have a weekend, but even your weekends are filled, especially summer months here where you got sports and lots of things going on. So where do you find that time? Honestly, we've learned, and we're trying to emulate the fact that most successful people, that's what they do, is they take the time. They make it, it's part of their scheduling, I think.
Yeah.
Where they, say for this particular hour, maybe.
Some do hours, some do days.
Okay.
Some do half a day. It's whatever works for them. I started with, I was going to do a day, but then I found that it was kind of good after like a half a day. I'm sure over time that will grow because I really enjoy it. But it's kind of different for everybody. You got to find your groove,
Well, and what's interesting about the fact that we can literally say that these are successful people is because in that time they're doing self-reflection, they're growing, they're meditating, maybe they're even including reading and varying other things. So self-awareness fuels self-love. It's like unlocking your potential and expanding your horizons.
I love that.
It's really what it is. It's like self-love plus unlocking your potential and expanding your horizons. Well, they equal self-awareness.
They sure do.
Yeah. So if you're not sure where to start, we recommend our 3-day boot camp, Pursue Your Fire, which is about discovering your power, unlocking your potential, and relaunching your story.
Well, that's all for this episode. Be sure to mark your calendars for the second Wednesday of the month as our new episodes drop then. And be sure to check out our devotional series, Sparks of Wisdom, that drops every Tuesday and Thursday. And if this podcast has touched your heart, we want to hear about it. Visit our testimonial page on our website to share your story.
We really would be honored if you would consider joining our community by subscribing to this podcast and by sharing what's happening around you and through you. So you can find us on all the major platforms, YouTube, Facebook, our website. So thanks again for tuning in.
Ignite your life.
Go out and set the world on fire.